Volume 1. CHV1. SS. You are listening at FameTV.info. Aria. There is one thing that I want to say to you. What, Viro? Inside a forest at the side of highway, a man and a girl was sitting around a bonfire in their campground. The man said such thing to a girl who was slurping soup from a warped bronze bowl. He was drinking the same soup while making a grimace like he had bitten a sour grape before placing the bowl on the ground where he was sitting cross-legged. "We ain't food." That girl Aria encountered the adventurer Viro in a town of a baron's territory. Now she accompanied him in order to help with a job that he accepted. Viro had accepted a job of guarding a noble. His client gave him an additional request to bring a kid who could work. It became an absurdly suspicious job offer where he couldn't tell about the job's detail or where it was located because of the sensitivity of the task, but even after hearing that, Aria accepted because she thought that the skill of a self-proclaimed rank for scout like Viro was something necessary for her. Even so, it didn't change the fact how suspicious the job offer looked. It couldn't be helped that Aria was still vaguely looking at him with suspicion. Are you listening? Wait, you got a really bad look in your eyes, Aria. I know. Although Aria too wasn't that overly worried. Even from the perspective of a child, Viro looked like a hopelessly irresponsible and no good adult, but Aria too understood that Viro was unexpectedly good-natured and wasn't a bad person. This isn't weed. Ora grass contained nourishment that can even make great calf goat to survive just from eating that, even in dry season. There is simply nobody else who will eat it other than goat because it has a lot of fiber and taste bitter. That's almost no different than weed. By the way, there was a record from 50 years ago that in the war against the demon race, some soldiers mixed the grass with wheat porridge and ate it, so it wasn't inedible for human. Viro had beans and wheat grains stored in his space-expanded bag. Aria thought that his diet would be unbalanced with just that and put in the grass without asking. The street urchin Aria started giving such explanation while flipping the pages of a small book with a scholarly expression. Viro stared at her with a dubious gaze that seemed to say, "What's with this kid?" while gulping down the remaining porridge in his bronze bowl in one go. Viro was also an adult male. It was pointless to get irritated against a kid. He changed tack to the method of praising a kid to make them grow. You know, this ingredient is tasty. It feels like it's melting in your mouth. It's the larva of black beetle that I found in the hollow of that tree over there. I don't want to hear any more than that. The night grew late like that, Aria. I decided that I'm going to train you intensely. Roger. The next morning, Viro declared that while standing imposingly with his arms folded. Aria consented to him despite not really understanding what he meant. In this continent, the culture of eating bug also existed, more or less. People normally ate insects at Melon Confederation at the north and at Karlfan Empire that was in a desert area, but in Claydale where the forest's blessing was bountiful, eating bug wasn't common. Viro explained to Aria about that, but Aria, who had strange knowledge, lectured about the validity of eating bug using difficult words like nutritional value and the like that the scholars at the capital would use. Viro thought that wasn't what he meant even while giving up and persuading her. What he said just now came from the thinking that if he couldn't persuade her, then he would train her so hard that she wouldn't even have any energy left over to cook. This decision was the result of the immaturity of Viro, who got too worked up against a child. In addition, Viro too needed to train Aria so that she would become useful when they arrived at their destination. Aria herself was also greedily seeking strength, so in the end both of them had no problem with this arrangement. And so try hunting a goblin if it comes out. Yes. The adult Viro started asking for the unreasonable right off the bat. The kid Aria replied affirmatively to that without any objection. It was a very strange scene, but in Viro's thought, if it was only against something like goblin, then he could just step in any time to prevent the worst from happening. Aria herself was also thinking that she wanted to increase her real battle experience, so there was no discord between the perceptions of the two of them. Goblin wasn't anything threatening in strength, but they had high reproductive power, so they were famous monsters that quite often got witnessed at the countryside highway. But although they were said as weak, if they attacked with weapon or rock then sometimes the average people would lose their life. However, when they actually encountered 3 goblins in the highway, Arya normally pulled out her knife and challenged them into a fight. It made Vero reflexively grabbed her shoulder to stop her. Those are goblins, you know. They are goblins, aren't they? Their combat strength is higher than yours, you know. I know. Well, it's fine, I guess. Seeing Arya replying so unconcernedly made Vero somehow felt complicated. He became reckless and told her try hunting them by herself then. For now he would see how it went, but in fact, Arya managed somehow. As expected, she changed her mind, seeing that it would be dangerous taking on the 3 of them simultaneously and finish them off one by one, but what Vero was worried about, that Arya would hesitate to take the life of a living thing, didn't happen. She calmly killed the 3 goblins under his watch. Vero tried to recall his first time killing. Was he also able to kill his opponents at that time with complete acceptance like this? Vero became an adventurer when he was 10 years old. Both his parents were adventurer. His father a warrior and his mother a scout raised him in this way of life. He had been traveling to many places since his childhood. His rank 3 mother trained him hard recklessly. He also met his current party leader around that time. That kind of parents told Vero something incomprehensible like Biyori going to meet a strong guy and vanished when he was 12 years old. Since then Vero became a slightly peevish person. In a sense Vero had grown up with special education as adventurer, even so he remembered feeling extremely nervous when taking life for the first time. How did someone raise a kid to become this kind of strange fellow like this? It made Vero inadvertently ask his question. Aren't you scared getting into a fight where you might die? Toward that question, Arya wiped the blood from his black knife while muttering dispassionately. Fear will make your eyes clouded. I won't waste the lives that are making me stronger. Are you man among men? What's with this kid? The thought crossed Vero's mind, but setting that aside, Vero had been aware from early on that despite how hard-boiled she was, Arya was just a girl who was dressing up as boy. She was just a child, so at first even Vero didn't notice, but commoner children wouldn't wear something like underwear until they were around 10 years old. And so it was pretty easy to find her gender because Arya was walking around with such fluttery outfit. It was also problematic to always make such small girl with not much stamina camped outside. From how she behaved, Vero guessed that she was around 10 years old, but she simply had a small build because she was a street urchin who didn't have enough food to eat. Even so, only when it came to foods that could be obtained inside the forest, if he let his guard down, Arya would pick strange ingredients based on her strange knowledge, so although it wasn't the main reason, it played a part in his decision to periodically stop by at villages and towns to resupply their food supply and the like. Vero too, although he was used with camping outside, being used to something and liking it were 2 different matters. If possible he wanted to sleep on a bed in an inn. Cooking his own food was also troublesome. He also wanted to drink alcohol and smoke. And if there was good woman to embrace, then he wouldn't have any complaint. Even so, his student, to be, Arya said something fugitive. Like that staying inside the forest where there was nobody was more calming for her rather than in the middle of a city. Her attitude was plainly troubling for Vero. He decided to camp outside most of the time rather than stopping by in human settlement throughout this trip due to various reasons like shortening their travel time, but in part it was because he thought that Arya was a town street urchin and so he would teach her the harshness of being adventurer through this trip. And yet, Arya was too stoic the whole time, like a mountain ascetic from somewhere. Because of that, right now it felt like it was Vero who was more looking forward to stop by in town or village. By the way, some villages had inn and some didn't have. In rough estimate, when a village populace was more than 500, then most of the times that village would have a bar that doubled as a cheap inn. The village that they stopped by yesterday was a big village with population nearly 1,000 and it was ruled by a knight. Vero recalled the story of the knight that he heard at that time. In some part because of Arya's behavior at that time too, he was considering making use of what he heard in order to ascertain Arya's capability soon, because it was getting troublesome for him. Yesterday afternoon, they stopped by in that village for food resupply and other things like alcohol. There Vero and Arya parted. Vero would go to the knight's mansion to obtain information about the surrounding area, while Arya would replenish their food from the village's merchant. Vero was uneasy to entrust the food replenishment to Arya, but as expected they couldn't exchange their roles. Besides, as expected, even Arya would surely not do something like digging for worm instead of buying dried vegetables and dried meats. He wanted to believe that, "You'll be fine, right? Leave it to me." Vero saw off Arya with an expression of a mother asking her small child doing an errand for the first time. Then he asked for a meeting with the knight using his standing as a high-ranked adventurer. With that he was able to obtain information about bandits who appeared near here. It seemed the bandit leader was a former mercenary or soldier with some smart in his brain. It seemed the knight had also tried subjugating the bandits using his servants and the village's militia, but the bandits had erased their trace skillfully and the subjugation failed. But, in the first place, they should find the bandits' hideout first if they were going to dispatch a subjugation squad. If the hideout hadn't been found, then the standard practice was making a request to the adventurers, but Scout with some skill who could defeat 10 or more bandits had mostly headed to the barren territory that was close to the monster habitat, so it seemed that the hideout hadn't been found yet. A quest of this difficulty level was something that Vero could clear by himself, but the knight was reluctant to pay the fee to hire a rank 4 adventurer, so while talking about the information of this area, the knight would also send glances at Vero while making small talks like it's really a pinch. What a problem this is. None of the information he obtained was interesting and they were insufficient to make Vero took action, but he kept it in mind, thinking that perhaps he could use it as Arya's training, and left the knight's manor. It should be time for Arya to finish shopping soon, wasn't it? It was a large village, but in the end it was just a village, so this place wasn't selling things like potion or weapon. Arya only went to buy dried vegetables and salt, so there was no way there would be any problem, but Vero got a bad premonition and walked toward the direction of the inn with a fast pace. There, as expected, there was some kind of commotion occurring. The morning of farmer was early. Sometimes there would also be farmer who finished the manual labor quickly and left the other works like weeding and the like to the children while they went to drink alcohol. When Vero observed the situation, just as he thought, there was a man there who seemed to be drunk already even though it wasn't evening yet. It seemed there was a drunkard acting violent, but the one who's standing in front of a young waitress who got picked on to protect her was a familiar face, or rather, that was definitely Arya. Vero had warned her to not get involved with trouble, but here she had already poked her nose into something troublesome. He was exasperated with her, even so he wondered if this could also serve as training for her. Thinking that, he decided to remain as a spectator, but he changed his mind once more when he saw Arya's face. Although the drunkard had no combat skill, his status seemed to be high from doing manual labor every day, so his combat strength surpassed Arya. Normally he would think that this man would serve as a good test for his capable favorite pupil, candidate, but the small Arya showed not a slightest fear even when facing against such large man. Her gaze toward the man was as though she was looking at a goblin. Seeing those eyes, Vero hurriedly cut in between the two because at this rate blood might get spilled. You there, wait a second. A large man like you threatening a woman and a kid like this, that's unsightly. Vero rushed in while acting cool. His speech caused the onlookers around them to watch dumbfounded. Arya, who should be the one receiving help, was looking at him like he was looking at a goblin. To be honest, the biggest reason for Vero to interfere with this commotion was because the waitress was a beauty. She looked like she was at her early 20s perhaps. She was a beauty with a little strong look that was just how Vero preferred it. It was rare to find a woman like this in a countryside village. If things went well, then perhaps he would be able to make a good memory tonight. Such thought crossed his mind briefly. Speaking from the result, a drunkard who didn't even have any combat skill had no way of defeating a rank 4 adventurer. Vero easily beat the man unconscious and entrusted him to a nearby villager before returning to the waitress. There he saw a beauty sporting a bright smile and a slight blush on her cheeks. Thank you very much. The beautiful waitress said that and shook the hand of Arya, who was dressed as a male while blushing from her handsome guy action. Vero watched that going on with a dumbfounded look. It was then the beautiful waitress finally noticed him and gave him a wide business smile. Allow me to thank you too as the father of this child. I'll treat both of you with the delicious cooking of my husband in our inn, so please come. I'm still 35 years old. I had heard that before. Viro had been complaining the whole time since they left the village. It was unknown whether it was being called a father that bothered him or because he was dejected that the woman how he thought as a waitress was actually a newlywed proprietress. Arya simply replied to him dispassionately without agreeing or disagreeing and also without getting angry or anything. If other people saw this, perhaps they would see a master and disciple with good relationship in a sense. Many people would surely get such misunderstanding. From a child's perspective, this man was really a hopeless adult, but from Arya's perspective, this didn't lower her evaluation of Viro. He wasn't looking down at her just because she was a kid or a female, which was something that an adult tended to do. Viro was interacting with her as a fellow human from equal standpoint. It made Arya respected him, but telling him that might make him get carried away and acted annoying, so Arya kept it a secret in her heart and lightly patted the shoulder of Viro, who was walking trudgingly. A human's life seems short but long. One day the right person will definitely appear for you. Oh. For some reason Viro even recalled things that he didn't want to recall, but considering the information that he heard from the village and the grit that Arya showed him, and then from other things like the battle against the goblins that she showed him just now, it made him say something that would be too reckless if he said it to a normal child. The village's chief told me that there are bandits appearing around here. Tonight we're going to hunt those bandits for your training. Like that, the trip that was full with recklessness where the impromptu master and student were destroying each other common senses continued before Arya arrived at the territory of Margrave Dandal, where she would have a fateful encounter. Listen to the full novel at FameTV.info, direct link in the description.